The story begins with the father introducing his daughter to a new member of the family, her new baby brother. The sibling's name was Alice, and she welcomed him, but at the same time treated him with a look of disdain. The main character's name is Roll. The father said that Roll was very tired today and suggested that Alice go to her room. But Roll was not tired, for unfortunately for the common man, in a past life he had an accident and died, and then reborn in the game he once passed, he became Rollascart, who is known as a spoiled young man and the main villain of the game. 10 years later, he would not only be humiliated by the main character team, but would also be murdered by his sister. Roll was furious. Was he really sent here to await his own death after 10 years, but he decided to change the plot and reverse the course of the game. Roll was a 9-year-old kid and he didn't understand what he could do to change the game and stay alive. Suddenly the system screen appeared in front of him. It described his characteristics. He was very weak, his rank was small and he only had 2 spells, Microthermal Wave and Invisible Hand. Roll wanted to buy something from the system store, but because of the high price he couldn't buy even the cheapest thing, but the system gave him a starter item, a Medal of Honor. This item will help him earn a reputation, and maybe it will help change his fate. After a while Roll saw Anna the maid in the hallway. He decided to hug her. He lied to her that he had read a scary fairy tale and now he was very scared. She replied embarrassed that he had nothing to be afraid of, and that the book he had read was just fiction. Roll apologized to her for his quarrel with her yesterday. Anna wondered when the gentleman had managed to become a good boy, or if he had just always concealed a fine character in himself. She took his hands and said she forgave him, at which point the system rewarded Roll with reputation points. As it turns out, it's a lot easier to farm reputation than gold. After a while, Roll and his little sister Alice were sitting at the table. Roll thought that Alice was very wary of him. If this continued, the game would go on plot and she would kill him. He decided to mend his relationship with his little sister as soon as possible, but she continued to treat him with disdain and wouldn't talk to him. Roll was at a loss as to how he could gain the trust of a 7-year-old child. At this point Alice's fork fell out of her hands and her hands were shaking violently. The maid was frightened and asked if she was all right. Alice said that she had nothing to worry about and said that she just couldn't hold the fork. But in fact, Alice is afraid of sharp objects, as she possessed a silver kinship as it is believed in the theocracy of Saint Mazida, one of the rarest. It would seem that her childhood should have been luxurious. However, after awakening her first kinship, Alice gained the ability to super regenerate, which led to many disasters. Any wound to Alice heals almost instantly without a scar, so she became the object of bullying by other noble children. Ever since then, Alice has been afraid of any sharp object. Roll realized that this was his chance to mend his relationship with his little sister. He asked the maid Anna to sit him down next to Alice to help her cut the steak, in order to keep Alice from picking up the knife. He helped her cut the meat and eat. Alice was glad he was helping her. Roll asked if she liked the food, but at this point she cried. Roll told the maid to change the food immediately. But Alice said the food was delicious and she thanked him. The system rewarded Roll with 1,000 reputation points. He was happy that he was gaining points so fast. Roll asked Anna to bring lots of delicious chocolate so he could feed his little sister. He gave Alice the chocolate, and his points started to rise again. Maid Anna thought, the young master is so unusual today, maybe he fell in love with little Alice. Mistress Alice really is a beauty. The affection between children is just lovely. At night, Roll was glad that the day was very productive and he got a lot of points. Plus Alice is such a cutie. He thought maybe he would take her as his wife in the future. Roll opened the system store to trade his points, for he saw the ability Army of Skeleton Bearers, summon creatures of the Gravedigger cult of the commandment, born to die. They bring joy to the living. He went to the training field of the House of Ascart. In order to test this ability, he summoned the skeletons and told them to attack the target. Suddenly they raised the coffin and began to dance with it. Roll was perplexed. Roll realized what it meant, born to die. they bring joy to the living. He told them to stop dancing. He looked at the coffin and had an idea. He came home and told his father that he had developed an interest in agriculture and taxation. He asked his father if he could work as a tax inspector to learn the tax system. His father was shocked because Roll could only eat, drink and be merry. Why did he want to study? Because it was not easy to work with the peasants. They were so cunning that every year they came up with all sorts of excuses not to pay taxes. He thought, let Roll experience for himself how hard it is to make money. The next day his father appointed Roll to collect taxes from the peasants. He saw a lot of people and thought he was lucky, but at that time there were skeletons in the mill. After a while one of the peasants thanked Roll for returning 20% of his grain. Roll said that this year's harvest was good, reminding him to get the land ready for winter. He thought, giving back 20% of the tax really works, so I'll get back the lost points quickly. No family in this world can afford such skeletons. Their working potential is beyond understanding, for they don't need food. Suddenly Roll's maid, Anna, came up to him and told him that he would soon be going home to see his beloved sister again. Anna said that the emperor was returning home today and he would be visited by a distinguished guest, Roll thought, as another guest. An hour later Roll returned to the palace and saw the guests arrive on a unicorn. It was a frost horse, a hybrid of mystic Pegasus and unicorn, a beast of noble origin, and there are very few of them left in this world. Only a pure human with angelic kinship could handle it, and only one family in all of Holy Mezit could afford it the shield of shining wings. Roll was incredibly pleased to meet Cain Zelade. He told him that his father had told him many tales of his brave exploits. Alice came out to Cain Zelade and said she was the adopted daughter of the Marquis of Carter. Cain looked at Alice with pity and asked, "You must be Larda's child." Alice asked, "Did you know my father?" Cain replied that her father had been brought up by him. Nora Zelade, Cain's daughter, came out to them. The Zelade family went into the palace. Nora wanted to be friends with Roll. She asked him what he thought of her. Roll said her beauty was like the morning light. She said she wanted to show him something interesting and showed him a red pendant. Roll said the pendant was gorgeous. Nora said that she liked the pendant very much because when the light fell on it, it emitted 16 whole red rays and it had a special effect. And it works like a lie detector. Nora Zelade is one of the 4 heroines of the game, but this seemingly almost perfect girl is not at all what she seems at first sight. To the outside world she is intelligent and majestic, but inside she hides a sadistic. In the future she will be called a bloodthirsty angel. Nora asked him why he was so surprised. After all, she is sure of her beauty, so why is she so wary of her? Maybe he knows her true nature. Roll replied that he knew all about her and asked her to stay away from him, as he was not interested in her or their Zaclide house. He had no intention of having a close relationship with them. Nora said she liked seeing the faces of scared people. She asked, "Don't you think that's strange?" He looked at her and thought, because she's going to be doing kinky tricks very soon. Suddenly she stepped on Roll's foot and told him that from now on he would be hers. At that moment Alice came into the room and asked Nora what she had been talking to her half-brother about. By evening Cain and his daughter Nora had gone home. Roll was glad of that, for Nora had gone to great lengths to kill Roll. Suddenly Roll looked at Alice and saw that she had more of a positive reputation for him, but on his father's side the reputation was growing by leaps and bounds. Roll asked Alice what happened. She said, "Little brother, you don't like me, you like Nora better, right? She's prettier and doesn't require you to take care of her. Unlike her, I'm just a kid who brings trouble and can't even eat by herself." Roll replied, "Nora can be beautiful, nice, decent, so what of it? So what if you can't use a fork or a knife? I feed you of my own free will. In my eyes you are the best. So, Alice, don't dwell on fears that will never come true. I will always be there for you." Alice hugged him and was incredibly happy. At night Roll lay in his room and thought, because he did not get rid of Nora, their meeting with her was not the same as in the original game, and it is for the best. The whole plot of this game is ultimately the result of certain choices, so it has to be different and Roll has to get stronger. The next day Roll was reading a book that said that the level of kinship determined the abilities of its owner. There were 4 in total: gold, silver, bronze and iron. Mana is the source of all the transcendent abilities in the world. Strength ability determines rank, and the better the kinship, the stronger the abilities. Roll thought, who would have thought that the only son of a famous mage family could be so useless, since all his characteristics are at a minimum. There was no way to improve it, and he might have to turn to the system to buy boosters. At this point the system alerted him that his body is physically weak and he may have difficulty consuming boosters. Roll needs to develop a base body and can buy low debuff potions. Roll opened the store to familiarize himself with low effect potions. There were several potions in the store. The first was Lober's Boosting Serum 2, and the second was Lober's Cooling Serum. He was perplexed, though the potions were very good, but he didn't have enough ponotes to buy any. Roll remembered that his father had told him that Nora's birthday was coming up and he needed to prepare a gift for her. Unexpectedly he found a book, Sorophia Trade Association. Due to the fact that they are in the center, all sorts of deals are done through them. In the game with the trade association you could make money, maybe it would help Roll too. Roll arrived at the trade association and was greeted there by the head of the trade department, Arwen. Roll said that he had brought them an item from the list that they were willing to purchase, item number 172 with a calming effect that suppresses the erosion of spells. He knew the item was worth at least 5,000, but suddenly Arwen offered 20,000 gold for the item. Roll agreed and went home. Arwen asked the appraiser if his bargain was justified. The appraiser replied that the results met and even exceeded expectations. So I have not wasted 20,000 gold coins in vain. This item is from the list of urgent acquisitions, so hurry up and send it overnight, and also, all information about the deal is reported to the family. Roll arrived at the palace and was glad that he had earned 20,000 so easily. He thought he was really rich. After all, he gets it all from the system store, and if he starts getting rich quick at the expense of the system, he's going to draw too much attention to himself. But so far he had only sold some trinkets, so it was time to get down to business. Thanks to the money he bought potions and drank them. Suddenly his stomach ached and some effect began. From the severe pain in his stomach, Roll passed out. At night Bruce went to the magician and asked him what this lamp was. He said he had never seen one, but looking at the workmanship, it was an ancient artifact, created before the Third Era. Bruce asked if there was any information about the seller. It was sold by the House of Ascartes of the Theocracy of Saint Mazida. The seller is the 9-year-old son of the Marquis of Ascartes. Bruce wondered if this item was from the House of Ascartes. He asked the magician, "Who do you think would sell a family heirloom for 20,000 gold pieces?" The magician answered confidently, "No one, it's impossible." Bruce thought, "It seems they still remember my promise, and this lamp to keep me alive is a reminder and a sign of goodwill. Is it really fate?" After a while Roll woke up and there was a chain and leash around his neck. Nora sat in front of him and asked him, "Oops, did you forget that was your birthday present to me?" She walked up to him and asked, "As a bonus, did you decide to keep yourself?" She wanted to kiss him. But at the last moment Roll woke up and it was just a dream. Alice was lying in front of him and he asked her in surprise, had she been lying with him the whole time? Anna, the maid, ran up to him anxiously. "And father," he asked worriedly, "what was his pain?" Father said that he felt the effect of the spell in the flask from which he drank, and swore to find the one who had tried to poison him. But Roll said he didn't need to find anyone, so he drank the potion himself. A few hours later, Roll went to the training field to see how well the effects of the potion worked. If Roll's baseline level was 6, then he could raise his rank to E. His skill deficiency was gone. Despite the fact that he needed a baseline level of 6 to access abilities, this potion was really powerful. Roll was able to take a small step forward that would help avoid future smirk. He remembered that he never bought a present for Nora, and before her birthday he decided to spend that time on pumping. 2 months later, it was Nora's birthday. They arrived at their royal manor. Alice got out of the carriage and told him she didn't like this birthday. Roll said she had nothing to worry about as long as she was there for him. Their family entered the royal hall, and after a while Roll became bored, as the real purpose is not a birthday party, but to establish relationships between the various imperial families. Roll felt sorry for Nora, since she has to go through this every year, but suddenly, Nora came up to him and said, "Oh, do you have any sympathy for me? You're the only one I've been waiting for here." Alice walked up to Nora and congratulated her on her birthday and asked her to stop teasing Roll. Nora stared at Alice and thought, "I wonder if this girl keeps her eyes on her big brother." Roll stood back and didn't know if she should stop them, because Alice gets so angry when Nora talks to me. Doesn't she like Nora too? Nora walked away from them and thought, "This isn't over, I won't give you Roll." After a while Roll offered Alice something to eat, but she was very angry and said she would go outside now to get some air. Alice thought, "I have nothing to do here, anyway my father said that the main task of establishing connections is entrusted to Roll, besides Nora is a princess and it will be beneficial for my brother to make friends with her." Suddenly some boys came up to her and told him to stop. He asked her if she remembered him. At this time Roll noticed that Alice had long been back, but she was absent. In addition there were no children in the hall. He suspected something amiss. The Baron came up to Alice and told her if she did not remember her old friend, and he wanted to talk to her about friendship, and he called Roll a loser. Alice exclaimed, "Don't you dare call my brother." Baron asked in surprise, "Do you really like him that much? Does not he know that you are a monster? You didn't show him how fast your wounds heal, and how you squirm with pain in the process. Who needs you like that?" The Baron put a fork to her eye and Alice was in a stupor as she was afraid of sharp objects, but at the last moment Roll threw a chair at the Baron. He asked, what was he going to do with his sister? The Baron was outraged that Roll hit him from behind and said he was going to take his life today. Roll thought past that he would have been beaten to death, but not now, for he is not who he was before. He deftly grabbed Baron's arm and activated the Mana Gauntlet skill. He easily toppled Baron and hit him in the head with a stick. Roll said, "If you touch Alice again I will kill you." Baron was furious, as he had never been so humiliated before. He cried out that he wouldn't let him get away with it and stuck a knife in Roll. Roll said, "Are you crazy? How dare you use a knife here?" The Baron replied, "You know about the feud between our families during the Twin Wars, don't you? Then you helped that ugly woman to the throne, but now I have a chance for revenge." He ran to Baron and wanted to kill him, but Roll stopped his hand. Alice was in a stupor. She wanted to help her brother but didn't know how. Suddenly she saw a fork. Taking it she ran up to Baron and stuck the fork in his hand. Baron didn't expect her to do that, so he stabbed her with the other hand. Roll was angry that Baron hit his little sister, and with all her might she hit Baron in the stomach and he flew several meters away. Roll said, "I told you what would happen if you touched my little sister again." He grabbed Baron by the head and slammed him against the wall with all his might. After that, he ran up to Alice. She was lying unconscious. At that moment many people ran to Baron and they all wanted revenge for what he had done to Baron. Roll took a stick in his hand and said, "I won't let them near you, Alice." But Nora came up to him and she told everyone to stop. She told Roll that she liked watching him squirm in pain, but she didn't like you squirming in pain in front of the others. Baron's friends told her that they didn't mean to hurt her, and they want revenge for their friend. Nora said that she would defend her friend just as they did. Suddenly her appearance changed and she had golden wings. She said, "In the name of the House of Cyclades, I demand that you leave immediately." Roll was shocked, as Nora is only 10 years old and already possesses such a skill. After all, to use magic at such a high level, you need to have a 5th baseline. Nora told the guests that she would not fight them at all. The guests froze in fear, because the difference in strength between each initial level is great. Being on the 6th level, they do not have a single chance, forgiving Nora. But suddenly their parents came up to them and Nora turned off her power. The parents were shocked as Roll was injured, Alice was lying unconscious and Baron was unconscious. They demanded an explanation from the children. All of Baron's friends said they had nothing to do with it and it was all Roll's fault. Baron was approached by his father Brian Ehrlich. He was terrified, but suddenly he grabbed his son by the neck and killed him. Everyone present was shocked. Brian apologized on behalf of his Ehrlich house and said he had a lot to do and had to leave. Despite the fact that the Ehrlichs were one of the 5 big houses, this could not allow Baron to get away with such a transgression, but no one expected Brian to go this far and kill his son for the honor of his house. Brian wondered, Roll, why are you still standing on your feet after such an injury? The next day, Roll and Alice were at home having fun. Roll thought, in the original game the incident at Nora's birthday party should have been the key reason for the breakup between Alice and Roll, so now it is unlikely that Alice would want to kill me in the future. After a while their father approached them. Roll asked his father if he had found the records of the war. Father pulled out a book and said that Prince Wade had once unleashed the March Uprising. He wanted to stop his sister, Princess Victoria, from exposing his involvement with the cult, and so began the War of the Twins. 3 of the 5 great houses sided with Wade, 1 house held neutrality, and only our house decided to stand up for Princess Victoria. For the forces commanded by your ancestor Ponte, the situation seemed unsuccessful. Victoria and Ponte were badly wounded during the battle, and requested reinforcements were unable to make their way into the city. Desperate to survive, Ponte used a family heirloom and turned the surroundings into a veritable maze to hide Victoria in it. They managed to wait until news of the rebellion reached the Most Holy Eminence, after which he returned with his army and defeated Wade's forces, so Ponte saved Princess Victoria. Roll asked, does it appear that the place where we live is the heart of that labyrinth? My father answered, right, this palace was built 3 generations before us, by my grandfather Ponte, so it's our family's property. Roll asked if they still had that relic, but my father said that that relic was a stone that had been turned to powder by overloads of magical power, and now they only had fragments of that stone. Roll thought, for it was written in those records that the Elric family was the most powerful back then, but that information wasn't enough, he needed to know. Roll got ready and left the palace. He said he needed to take a little walk. After he left, Alice came to her father and said that she wanted to protect her brother and become stronger because he was hurt in the Elric house because of her. That night Alice couldn't do anything, but she wanted to protect Roll. Her father told her it wasn't her fault, plus she was able to protect her brother, even though she is afraid of sharp objects, but she dared to use a fork, and maybe if it wasn't for her, Roll might be dead by now. Alice, the path of practice is not as smooth as many people think. It is full of dangers and horrors. Are you sure you want to go down that path for another person? Alice answered, there is nothing more horrible than losing your brother, so please, father, teach me magic. Her father promised her that she would become stronger. Roll came to Arwina. As it turned out he had been promoted to the position of manager of the Chamber of Commerce of Theocracy. Roll came to find out all the information about the House of Elric. Arwen was greatly surprised, since given the information he had so far, one could conclude that the Elric family was somewhat unusual. Roll asked what that meant. He replied, let's just say, as you know, Sorophia is a merchant organization, so we are very scrupulous about such things as information. However, despite the fact that we invest a lot of resources in data mining, we have not been able to obtain reliable information about the House of Elric. As a result of the Battle of the Twins, House Elric was banished to guard the border that ran between 3 countries, namely, the Austin Empire, the Night Kingdom of Pender, and Theocracy. This place was very dangerous and the plan of the royal family was to weaken them. But things turned out differently. During those decades in exile, House Elric rose from its knees and rejoined the 5 strongest houses. They even managed to take the leading position, becoming stronger than House Asgarth. But they needed money for this rise, and we could not find out where they got it from. Arwen told Roll to be very careful with the Elric family as they could be very dangerous. After a while Roll returned home. Suddenly he saw Nora in the house. He wondered to her what she was doing here. She had come as she was worried about his wound, and now all the servants would not bother them as they were busy with household chores. Nora asked, wasn't he glad to be alone with her? But Roll tried to avoid the conversation. She said she had come here to give him a gift. He opened the box and there was a holy blade of 12 wings. Roll asked in surprise if this holy relic was a gift for him. Nora said, yes, but Roll doesn't meet some requirements yet, but since he proved himself worthy on his birthday, this blade is given temporarily not to him, but to the house of Asgard. Suddenly she took his hand and bit his finger. She said it was a necessary ceremony. She also took out a knife and cut her finger. They aligned their cut fingers and their blood dripped on the blade. Suddenly the blade got bigger, and at that moment Roll fell to his knees and grabbed his head. He had a very strange feeling. Meanwhile, somewhere in the room a heirloom stone glowed. Roll asked her what had just happened. She said it was the initiation ritual of the blade. An angel bloodline needed to use the 12 wings. By mixing our blood, the blade recognized you as its master. Our blood is also used to create a special ability that others cannot use. It usually takes a month. And now this blade is yours. Roll was incredibly happy because this blade is of divine class. After a while Nora was about to leave. Before she left she said that for the new year their grandfather wanted to see him. Your grandfather? At this point he was in a stupor. 2 hours later, Roll asked Anna's maid if she knew what the tradition of exchanging blades meant. Anna answered that the representative of military or chivalrous families usually give the woman they are courting a dagger as a symbol of recognition, and if the woman agrees, she gives the dagger in return. It means that the couple shared the same feelings. Anna asked him what he had in the box. He said it was a gift from Mr. Kane. She was about to leave but saw him take out a blade and thought, Princess Alice, bad news, the young master is a womanizer. Time passed and it was New Year's Eve. Roll arrived to see the Holy Enlightenment. He showed the invitation and the guards let him in. Roll was very cautious, for the Reverend had never appeared in the game. He came to him and said, Roll Asgard of the House of Asgard arrived for an audience. I am honored to meet you. He asked Roll to come closer. Suddenly he took out a box of chocolates and offered them to Roll, but he thanked for the offer and refused them. The Reverend said that Nora had mentioned Roll. Roll thought he looked more like a kind grandfather. Reverend said he didn't call Roll for anything in particular, and he just wanted to see him. He asked if he was using the dagger. Roll said the dagger was easy to handle. Miss Nora said it was because it absorbed my blood. Eminence reached out his hand to the dagger and he was greatly surprised as there was a high level of compatibility and the blade had already spawned 2 abilities. Reverend laughed and said that Roll and Nora were destined to be together. He said that he was aware of that situation on Nora's birthday, and now few heirs of noble families have such a fair heart, for these few decades have very corrupted people's hearts. The Asgard family has a worthy heritage, but the years have taken much from them. I hope that you can return your family to its former glory. The Reverend invited Roll to join him for Vespers, and Roll accepted, for he could not refuse such a respected man. His Holy Eminence John Heathcliff is ruler of the theocracy of Saint Mazite, head of the Heathcliff family. Great leader of the Goddess Church, messenger of God, first apostle, holy war hero, slayer of deviants, he had many titles and was adored by the people. The Reverend and Roll stood on the balcony in front of the people for so long that after a while they were showered with snow. At night Roll returned home and he got a lot of useful information from the Eminence that Nora was not supposed to know. Suddenly a new maid came into his room and said that she had a message from his father. She said that this year Cain and his father had gone on an evening hunt with Alice and would return tomorrow night. After a while, Roll opened the system store, and since he was compensated by Eric's family, he decided to buy something. He bought the skill Calamity of Bloodshed. It can be useful, however it has a very low trigger rate. Roll fell asleep, and that's when someone opened the door to his room and said it's time to get started. Suddenly after a while Roll heard someone's voice. He thought it was Anna and asked her what time it was. Nora told him it was 6 p.m. Roll opened his eyes and was shocked. He asked her when she arrived and why no one had informed him. She said that all the servants had been replaced by her servants and only her people were in the house now. Nora said she came to see him to celebrate the new year with him. She took out candy and offered him to eat it. But Roll said he didn't want to listen to her and he wanted to sleep again. Nora asked him if he could show her the labyrinth, but Roll ignored her. Nora said, "Well, if you decide to sleep anyway, fine, but I can't guarantee that nothing will happen while you're asleep." But Roll wasn't satisfied with that, and he decided to take a tour of the house. And suddenly Nora had a strange feeling, and asked if he had a protective amulet on him. He pulled out the amulet and said that he always had it on him lately. The protective amulet is capable of repelling several attacks of high skill. Nora said that she sensed someone was watching them. Roll took her hand and said that maybe something did happen as it was too quiet and the servants hadn't been seen for a long time. He was going to go to the vault, which was in the central part of the labyrinth, as it was safest there. But at that moment a certain man appeared in front of them. He said in surprise, "You found me after all." At this time Brian said that the royal family had been following him closely lately. The man asked him, "I heard your plan went wrong. What went wrong?" "My worthless heir and his friends were on hand, but for some reason the prophecy didn't come true. Until Katia woke up, that guy is a problem for us and will remain one as long as he is alive or not on our side." Brian asked, "Should I try again? The prophecy is not just with us, there must be those who fear the coming and want to hinder us. And yes, will you appreciate the painting I recently purchased?" A curtain opened in front of Brian and there was a picture of Roll and Nora running. At this time, Roll was alerted by the system that he was facing a human skin artist, Peter Carter, enemy rank, baseline level 4, power difference too great, flee immediately. Brian asked who could it be. He replied, "The Mithril Priory. They wanted to cooperate with us but I turned them down. I don't really like them, not only the Ascarts but the Zyklades have changed at the same time, too many changes." Brian said you can't do as you please in the Holy Capital and you can't cheat the Holy Throne. He answered, "True, they may have power and connections to His Excellency, but we have Sia's radiance, and it seems our friends don't quite realize it." He asked, "As I see Lord Brian, are you interested in my painting, because of the kid?" Brian said, "Not really, but whenever I look at this place I inexplicably feel like I know him." At this time, a member of the Mithril Priory, the deputy head of the Lacrasse, came to see John. He came to express their sincere intentions. But John told him that he did not recall inviting them. Lacrasse apologized for the uninvited visit, but he said that they did not want to harm the Zyklade family and the Ascart family was also not their whole, they only wanted the child of the prophecy. At this time the man who arrived at Roll and Nora introduced himself as a member of the Mithril Priory, but suddenly Roll and Nora wanted to run away from him, but he activated the ability and they fell into an illusion in which they could do nothing. He asked them to listen to him until the end. Roll thought, has the course of the story changed again? I haven't encountered this character in the game. He told them they could only get out of here if one of the two of them died. He didn't care who died and stayed alive. Nora said, "Do you think we would believe someone like you?" He replied, "Then you leave me no choice, I will kill you too." Suddenly Nora changed her appearance again and said that she was responsible for Roll, his future servant and close friend. But he was not going to listen to them and was about to kill the two of them. suddenly monsters and animals began to come out of the pictures. At this time Lacrasse voiced the terms. The names on the list were Caroline Escart, Vincent Escart and Roy Escart. John said, "Do you know these names?" John was furious and exclaimed, "The Cyclades made a promise back at the beginning of the Third Era to protect the Escart family. I am the monarch and head of the ruling house, although your offer is attractive, but I am still first and foremost a holy throne, the patriarch. I must be an example of dignity, righteousness and justice." Lacrasse was shocked and realized that the negotiations had reached an impasse. John told him to go away, as far away as he could. At that moment Roll and Nora heard John's voice. They didn't understand where his voice was coming from, but at that moment Roll got a bad headache again and the stranger didn't understand what was going on here, and suddenly there was a big and bright beam of light. After a while Roll heard Nora's voice. She asked him to wake up. After Roll woke up he didn't understand where he was. He saw a large number of dead guards and a smoking city. He asked, "What is this place?" Suddenly a system notification appeared in front of him. He saw his characteristics and was surprised as there were many changes. The system warned him that he had started a kinship awakening. The system urged him to turn off the kinship awakening as there was a high chance of death. But Roll decided to continue, but to do so he had to pay 500,000 gold pieces, but he had that much, and the system offered to borrow, against a pledge to disable the system for 10 years and 6 months, and if Roll did not repay the debt within 5 years, the system would disable forever. He agreed, and at that point the kinship awakening aid was activated. After a while Roll returned to Norma and he asked if she had been able to find out anything. She said they were on the battlefield but it was not clear where. They decided to look at the dead guards, and they found the emblem of the Victorian Illyrics, and the soldiers were also wearing chain mail, which confirmed that they were now in the Victorian era. Roll wondered if they were now in the March Uprising during the War of the Twins. Roll's kinship awakening process is already at 21%. Roll found a letter on the battlefield which had the date March 13, 828, which meant they were at the time of the Gemini War. They set out to find any information, and after a while they ran into the knights. Nora and Roll met Peter. As it turned out he was with them at the time too. The knights tried to attack Peter, but he was very strong and grabbed one knight and said, "Why can't I just kill these kids? It makes me so mad." Roll and Nora decided to run away from there while Peter got all the knights' attention. Roll assumed that it was the spell of the labyrinth that could not be broken. Only the owner of the treasure of the labyrinth could move freely here. Now the treasure must be in the hands of Ponte and Victoria. Nora and Roll decided to find them. Nora was feeling ill and had a high fever. Roll took her on his back and went looking for them. At this time in the maze manor Ponte didn't understand why the kinship detector was out of order. At this time Victoria woke up and asked Ponte what he was doing. He said that the kinship detector was broken. She picked it up and was shocked. Since the detector can't be broken, then why did it detect Cyclade blood on Lock Street? Ponte asked her who it could be. She suggested it could be her father's illegitimate child. Victoria wanted to save this child, but Ponte wanted to stop her because he was afraid they might meet Wade on the way. At this time, Roll and Nora were on Lock Street. Nora's blood flow was accelerated, a symptom of increased kinship, but there was nothing in this building that could help Nora. After a while, Roll fell asleep and had a dream about meeting a large skeleton. He asked Roll the question, "How do the dead pass on their power?" The skeleton said he didn't have to answer his question right away. Roll could think about it and only then answer. But he still didn't know what to answer, and the skeleton told him that he could come back next time and answer the question, at which point Roll woke up. A system notification appeared in front of him, saying that the first meeting was over, as well as Roll was given a unique status of Grander's Promise. Thanks to this, he got a new skill of invulnerability for 30 seconds, but as it turned out he made a promise to the king to bring him back to the real world. Roll thought, it turns out the awakening progress is frozen, because of the answer to his question, how do the dead transfer their power? 15 minutes later Nora woke up. She was feeling really bad and said she had never felt this bad before. She asked him, "You don't seem to hate me so much anymore." Roll replied, "I never hated you, I was just a little afraid of you, and now I don't." She gave the date of June 15th, it was the day of her baptism. She would only reveal herself to those closest to her, and if the anger of her father or grandfather came down on him, if Roll gave that date, they would all understand at once. Nora told him to go alone at dawn, for only an ancestor can guide her awakening of the family, and she would be a mere burden to him. There were no deaths in the original, Chronicler's Witness, storyline. In the story arc Nora herself said that she had never found herself in a desperate situation. Alice's change of fate entailed a whole series of further changes, and Roll could not have supposed that it would end up putting Nora's life in danger. Obviously, it was Roll's fault that Nora ended up here, then why does Nora still continue to worry about Roll's safety? Roll has promised to protect Nora, because he didn't get the Grander's promise ability for nothing. Greater power portends greater danger as well. And the only known threat to Roll is Peter Carter. He must be at peak 4 true level. Even if those knights wore him out, Roll at level 6 still won't be that easy to deal with him. From what Roll found out in the last fight, Peter's ability is to summon monsters from paintings. Based on this, Roll assumed that Peter's weakness is melee, but how does Roll strike at close range? He has only to rely on his blade. At this time Peter Carter was very badly wounded, as those knights were at true level 5. Peter summoned a monster with a dog that helped him find Roll's location. The monster and the dog entered the palace, and at that moment Roll attacked them. They were not expecting this, and he pierced them with his blade. Peter was furious and activated his skills and started to attack Roll, but he was able to defend himself from his magic. He was surprised as he didn't understand where Roll was going. He noticed that Roll had a blade. At this time Roll hid on the roof of the building. Thanks to the fog he couldn't be seen, and he thought of that plan to kill Peter. He took the lamp and went downstairs. He left the lamp, and when Peter passed he saw the lamp. Suddenly Roll jumped out at him and stabbed him with his blade. Peter said he underestimated him. However, Peter was strong, and at the last moment he materialized a picture in the heart area where Roll had pierced him. Diving is Peter's main ability. A part of his body had already turned into a picture. Suddenly he summoned from that picture a terrible monster, which he told him to kill Roll. But Roll activated Gardner's promise ability, which gave him invulnerability for 30 seconds. Peter was stunned. He couldn't believe that Roll could make a deal with a creature like that. Roll approached Peter. He was incredibly angry and strong. At that moment he swung his blade, killing Peter. The invulnerability had severely exhausted Roll, and he was about to go back, but at that moment a blond man was already standing behind him and asked Roll where he was going. Roll was shocked and he decided to hit him. Prince Wade stood in front of him. He stopped Roll's blade with his finger. Roll was really scared. Wade was at the 3rd true level. That's a level stronger than Peter. Wade asked, "So you're the one who just killed a level 4 true level foe? By the way you're dressed you must be of the aristocracy, I'm curious. I've never heard of a nobleman being granted a holy blade, much less an activated one." Roll thought, Wade started this civil war in order to remain the sole heir to Zaclade and leave only his supporters, but for Nora, who supported Victoria, the very thought of joining Wade was simply not acceptable, but she and Wade were of the same blood, and now only he could help her to heal. Roll tried to think of a way to save her, but how? At that moment the severe headache hit Roll again and he grabbed his head. After that, Roll began to see Wade's memories from his childhood. Wade's mother put her hand on his face. He asked, "Mother, did you come here again?" She said, "Because these kids are so cute, just like you and Victoria, and besides, you and Victoria do all kinds of studying every day. Look. Wade, you're not like those kids, you're the future heir to a holy theocracy, and those kids, for completely different reasons, are without a mom and a dad. Wade, you have a responsibility from birth, you are the future monarch of the theocracy of Holy Mesiat, a messenger of Sia and an angelic child, you must rule righteously and justly, and your subjects will sing your glory and name. But by no means forget, all men are equal, regardless of their status. At that time a girl was passing near them, and a tile began to fall on her from the roof, but Mother used her attribute to protect her. Everyone was shocked as her attribute did not belong to any of the three major ones. No one could believe that the monarch's wife would be from heretics. It was a disgrace to the entire theocracy. After which Wade's mother, Queen Marie, was sent to prison. Wade in the meantime studied hard to become a holy throne in order to help his mother and change things. But one day a maid came to him and told him that his mother was very sick while in prison. Wade rushed to the prison to visit his mother, but they wouldn't let him in because the plague was raging there, and even though she was his mother, they wouldn't let him in because she was a heretic, and soon Wade's mother died. After a while, Roll woke up and Wade said to him, "You don't seem to be able to fight anymore." Roll was shocked because he had just seen Wade's memories, and through them he learned that Wade was not a cultist, but a heretic, and that changes everything completely. Wade went after Victoria, and he told his assistant to keep an eye on Roll. He approached Roll and told him to be more respectful to His Highness Wade. The system notified Roll that Brian Elric was standing in front of him. He was Wade's aide. Meanwhile, Wade found Nora. She was unconscious. He thought she'd been dumped by Ponte. Though she and Victoria looked alike, it certainly wasn't her, Wade thought. He told the servants to bring Roll to him. Suddenly their kingdom was attacked. Roll was glad, for he thought he would be saved by his ancestors. After a while Victoria and Ponte were able to free Nora. She regained consciousness and was in shock as Victoria herself was in front of her. Victoria said, "Don't be afraid, child, you are safe, now I will direct your burst, don't worry." Nora answered, "Your Highness, I am Nora Zaclade, though you will not believe me, but I am your distant descendant. I am not here alone, there was a boy with me, his name is Rolascart, he is an important man to me, please find him." Victoria and Ponte asked in surprise, "Ascart?" Victoria asked Ponte if he knew the man. Ponte said there was no such thing in their family. He questioned Nora if she was sure her friend really came from the Ascart family. Nora swore by her kinship. Victoria said that searching for a child in the heat of battle was too dangerous. Ponte replied, "I know, but our house of Ascart has too few descendants. Even if he is from a side branch of the family, I can't just abandon him. Don't worry, I'll have time to activate the labyrinth before Wade gets to us. I'll create a fog barrier and you leave." But at that moment Wade arrived on the battlefield. He told Brian to find and bring Roll back. At this time Roll turned to the Knights of Victoria for help to get to Victoria. They were ready to help him, but suddenly a bloody mist overtook the knights and in an instant all the knights were left headless. The blood mist was headed for Roll, but he was protected by a protective amulet. Brian came up to him. He was surprised that he had the protective amulet, and he told Roll to go after it, and if he refused he would take it by force. Roll had no choice but to fight Brian. He attacked him and activated the Grander's Promise skill, which gave him invulnerability for 30 seconds. During the battle Brian sensed it. He was shocked. He said in surprise, "Boy, you're a heretic. Why are you going to Victoria? Don't you know what His Highness Wade is fighting for?" Roll answered him that he was talking too much. He thought, "This war is much more than just revenge for his mother." When I saw Wade's memories, his thoughts filled my head. Her Highness Marie died because of sickness, because of nobility, and because she was different. From another region, another race, another nation, another faith, regardless of her status, regardless of her actions, once it was known that she was different, not like everyone else, she began to be persecuted. Defeating the discrimination born of different views is the main purpose of this war. He wants to create a world without borders and oppression, where people are equal, wants to create a great empire, as great as Austin's ancient empire of 1,000 years ago. Because of this great ideal and mighty power, Wade has so many followers, except. But at this point, Roll could no longer think, for his time of invulnerability was running out. He had to kill Brian as soon as possible. He almost caught him by mistake and wanted to stab him in the back with his blade, but at the last moment Brian defended himself with his blade. Brian reached out his hand to Roll's face and activated a powerful blast, but Roll managed to activate the protective talisman. It flew away for how many meters? Brian approached him. Roll wondered why he didn't kill him. Brian said, "You have a talent. If you give you time to nurture it, maybe in the future you can become a great man. As our opponent you will be a great threat to us." Roll replied, "Thank you for so much appreciation. Then I'll give you one piece of advice too. Next time you want to kill, don't say so much." Brian got angry and wanted to attack him, but at the last moment Ponte saved Roll. Brian said, "This boy is a heretic." Ponte asked surprised, "So what? I have to give him to you." Ponte said he had a lot to do besides Brian and disappeared from the battlefield, along with Roll. Ponte led Roll to Nora. She was very happy to see him. Ponte ordered the archers to attack one last time, then retreat. He looked at Roll and thought that he should heal him as soon as possible. But at that moment Roll lost consciousness again and faced the skeleton. The skeleton said, "Of all the people who got my power, you are the first to come back so quickly. The others treasured it immensely and didn't allow it to be used so easily. You used it twice in one day." Roll asked, "Didn't you give it to me to use it? I used your power at a critical moment." The skeleton replied, "Right, that power really shouldn't gather dust. I gave it to you to use." The great warriors showed their courage in battle, thereby making their enemies tremble before them, and that trembling gave them power, making them stronger. The second time you used your ability recklessly, and now those who saw you will be much more careful. But the first time? What on earth did you use that power for? To ravish that angel Peter? Roll answered, "I killed Peter because there was no end to his atrocities. I protected Nora because I thought she deserved my protection. Yes, she has flaws, but I don't care. Do you have any more questions?" Skeleton said thoughtfully, You just like her." Roll replied indignantly, "I didn't say that, I just did what I thought was right." Skeleton said, "It doesn't matter anymore, it's pretty late. I gave you the ability 3 times, you've already used up 2, the next time we meet I'll expect an answer from you. Now it's time for you to go." Roll woke up on the bed and Nora hugged him. He said he was fine and it was all because of the awakening of his kinship. Nora said that from now on she would protect him as she was obviously stronger than him. She took his hand and said that she was willing to give her life for him. At that moment Ponte and Victoria came into the room. They said that was true love between a married couple. Roll remembered that Nora and Victoria looked very much alike, as he had seen sprites of the characters in the game, and in a few years Nora would look the same. Roll asked Ponte, "I want to know something about our family, could you answer?" "Of course, I'm the current head of the House of Asgard, so you can come to me for any family matters." "Mr. Ponte, our family has its own lineage, could you tell me about it?" Ponte was greatly surprised and asked, "Were you able to hold out on the battlefield through the power of kinship?" He grabbed Roll's arm and told everyone they urgently needed to go to his office. Roll asked if there was something wrong. Ponte answered that our kind did possess a kinship, only that in the 3rd century it was interrupted, only 2 awoke, but in the end they both disappeared without a trace. If they did die, it means that nothing of them remains. After a while Roll sat in his room and wondered, though the ancestor told about the mystery of kinship, but the family records are badly damaged, so nothing specific about the ability is unknown. It is quite possible that it has something to do with researching the past and its legacy. It probably seems to be true, because now I am actually doing research on the history of my family. Except that the 2 ancestors who had awakened the powers seem to have perished in their journeys into the past. I already thought that I finally got to the truth. When will I finally find out the truth? 32 hours to go and we can leave this place to let us go. Victoria has made up her mind to fight Wade tomorrow, but there's just one thing that's been bugging me. Nora came to Roll and said that she wanted to stay here after she found out about the fight tomorrow. Roll was surprised. He asked, "But why?" "Because it's too dangerous." Nora replied that after they saved her she couldn't just take off and run away. It was against her principles and beliefs, and if she just ran away she wouldn't be worthy of owning a kinship. Nora asked, "You're not going to run away either, are you?" Roll said he had good reason to. Nora replied that her grandfather wanted her to witness these events, in which case it was her duty to see everything with her own eyes until the very end. "Besides, I don't want to part with you." Roll said, "If it came to that, I must tell you something about this war. The reason Wade started the war, it's not what we imagined, it's not just a riot." The next day Victoria arrived at Wade's house with her army. Wade said, "Victoria, I didn't expect you to decide to show up on your own, finally remember what you did to our mother and decide to leave the resistance." Victoria replied, "I never forgot about Mom, and I won't stipulate you for revenge, but you can't change everything overnight. Look at the consequences of your revolution. In less than a month the holy capital was filled with rivers of blood. How many people were killed because of you? Didn't you ever think about them?" Wade said revolution is impossible without victims. In all times revolution has threatened the interests of the powerful. How to build something new without turning the old into ashes? If no wood is added to the fire of revolution, the flames will gradually be extinguished by the aristocrats and bishops. Apparently we'll never agree. It is just so, this battle has been irreversible from the start. Draw your sword, sister. For peace, for justice. At that moment the violent battle between Wade and Victoria began. Nora and Roll were watching this battle on the roof of the building. Nora thought, "Even though my grandfather wanted me to see it all, I still don't know which one was right." Roll replied, "I understand you. Sometimes you can't just divide into white and black, harshness for the sake of future justice, confrontation for the sake of today's stability. Each one is right, you just have to figure out which side you're on, which one you support, that's all." At this time Victoria told Ponte that they had no numerical advantage. Ponte activated the maze and the entire battlefield was shrouded in a white fog. Wade saw the holy blade in their hands and was stunned. Ponte and Victoria landed one of the strongest blows with the blade that was almost impossible to defend against. After which, Victoria and Ponte had no strength left. Wade thought, "Is it really over?" At that moment, Wade heard his mother's voice. She told him that he had a responsibility and he was the future monarch of the theocracy of Holy Mazida. Wade asked, "Mother, have I lived up to your expectations? Can a man be condemned for being of the wrong religion? Since they hated heretics, I became one. I rejected mercy, for all regard it as weakness, and chose wrath, for it is impossible to quench the anger in a man's heart." Wade was furious and he was overwhelmed with anger. His strength and hatred made him look very different. Victoria and Ponte were shocked and couldn't believe it. Wade got his second true level. He broke through sheer force of will, so that's why they couldn't beat Wade. Roll was surprised. The course of history didn't seem to have changed much. Now it was time to make his choice. At this time Wade drew his blade and with one swing of his blade he wanted to kill Victoria and Ponte, but at the last moment Ponte activated the teleportation magic, but because he was exhausted he couldn't teleport far. Wade walked up to Victoria and Ponte and told them it was their end and was going to kill them again, but at that moment Nora protected them with her magic. Victoria asked, "Nora, what are you doing here? Where's Roll?" Roll was behind Wade and told him, "You can't dodge," activating the Grander's Promise ability. Roll was at the skeleton again. He asked Roll, "So are you ready to give me an answer? Then answer, how do the dead transfer their power?" Roll said he had two answers, one about the question and one about you. Which one do you want to hear? What? How interesting, say both, I want to hear you. Roll said, "After what I've seen in this era, I think you already know my answer, don't you? Spirit, will and aspiration, that's how the dead pass on their power. there are those who write historical works because of them, there are those who do research because of them, and there are those who spend their lives passing on their ideals to others. And when all this remains in its fullness, it is transformed from ordinary pages into a culture. This inheritance is the way in which the dead pass on their aspirations, changing the present, discarding the unnecessary and adding the new. And the more time passes, the stronger their influence, eventually it becomes the link between the dead and the living. Except it only works when there's a descendant and something to inherit. You have none of that. The skeleton was furious and told Roll to watch what he said, but Roll was right, that was the answer he wanted to hear. Skeleton said, "Then I'll ask you something, Roll Ascart, what do you think we are to each other?" Roll said, "Friends." The skeleton was surprised, and said, "Then I ask you as a friend, bring victory." At that moment Roll returned to the battlefield and Wade wondered what kind of aura that was, a blessing from an ancient deity. Didn't think I could meet someone like that here. Too bad, to the ancient gods people like you are just toys. Wade attacked Roll, but he had no problem defending himself from his attack and Roll's appearance changed greatly. Roll attacked Wade and summoned the skeleton Grandar. Wade was in a stupor as this was not just a blessing, it was a treaty with an ancient deity. Grandar said that thanks to his power, they could kill Wade with just one blow. Roll was surprised and he and Grandar struck Wade hardest. Wade's blade broke and he was lying on the ground. He said that Roll surprised him a lot. Roll was surprised too, that Wade could talk after such an attack. Wade asked Roll, "You're using heretical power, so why are you trying to stop me?" "There's a lot of reasons for that, like I think it would have been better to have spent all my energy on improving people's lives instead of this war right now, but there's a more important reason. If you could pick up a sword to protect someone close to you, would you do otherwise?" Wade said he and Roll are the same, but their views and ideas are very different. After a while, Nora and Roll returned to the present, their families learning that there had been an outright attempt on their children, by Peter. The head of the family suggested to Roll's father that Nora become Roll's protector, since she was stronger than him and had a fifth true level.